The gently flickering candlelight cast a weak glow, imprinting a hunched shadow on the pristine white wall. This was a room within the Scholar's Tower in the capital of the Gabella Empire. An elderly man with a completely white beard and hair was buried amidst a pile of books and scrolls, meticulously flipping through pages as if searching for some information. Outside, the sound of the clock tower's bells rang out. The ancient and melodious chime reverberated over the entire city, announcing the arrival of midnight. Yet the old man seemed not to hear it, continuing to immerse himself in the books. The door to the room quietly opened not far away, and a young man holding a candlestick walked in. He whispered, "Master, it's already midnight. You really should rest." "What? It's that late already?" Only then did the old man close the heavy tome in his hands and pull out a handkerchief to rub his tired eyes. "I should indeed get a good night's sleep. Give me a hand. This old body is getting more and more useless." The young man put down the candlestick and slowly helped the old man to his feet. "At today's meeting before the Emperor, everyone was very curious about what you've been doing these past few days. Even His Majesty privately asked me about it again." "Oh, it must have been quite a headache for you to make up a suitable excuse on the spot, right?" The young man named Mond hesitated awkwardly for a moment. "Is that meteor from a few days ago really worth such attention?" As soon as he said this, the smile on the old man's face froze, and his slightly furrowed brow showed that his mind was no longer at peace. "Sorry, I shouldn't have doubted you." Seeing the old man's serious expression, Mond felt ashamed. "Mond, I'm not blaming you. Being bold enough to question is a good quality." The old man quickly reassured him. "Indeed, I can't stop worrying about this meteor. I also hope I'm just overthinking it. If, unfortunately, it brings disaster as recorded in the ancient scrolls, then according to previous descriptions, this catastrophe will far exceed our imagination. Let me tell you about the previous occurrences." He then unfolded a parchment scroll and began to slowly narrate his findings over the past few days. In a dark alley, next to the clock tower, a shadowy figure silently walked in, accompanied by the lingering sound of the bells. Cloaked and moving away from the moonlight, he slowly proceeded deeper into the alley, his face always shrouded in the shadow of his hood. At the first corner, he stopped. "Why are you so late today?" A rough voice sounded. Another cloaked figure who had been waiting there spoke, his face also hidden under his hood, faintly revealing a thick beard. "A storm is coming. We need to make more preparations." "What kind of preparations?" "Ropes, canvas, and harpoons." The bearded man nodded. "With these, we can safely set out to sea. Go ahead. We will be praying for you at the port's church." Then he disappeared into the shadows. After confirming there was nothing unusual around, the first cloaked man also left. Back in the Scholar's Tower, the old man's narration had ended for a while, but Mond's forehead was now covered in cold sweat. After a long silence, Mond finally spoke. "If that's the case, shouldn't we immediately report to His Majesty and warn the people?" "No, we know nothing about the disaster itself. We don't know in what form it will occur, when exactly it will come, or how to effectively respond. Revealing it too early would be useless and would instead cause widespread panic, even giving some ill-intentioned people an opportunity." "You're right. I was too rash." The old man's disciple looked slightly ashamed. The old man opened the window, and a fresh rush of air quickly filled the room. He looked out at the low night sky and murmured, "A storm is coming."
The biting cold wind swirled in the pitch-black night sky. It was already late at night, but the master bedroom in the Lord's castle of Aldentown was still brightly lit. On the large bed lay a chubby black-haired boy, about 14 or 15 years old. He was unconscious. Not far from the bed, the castle's butler, Philip, was anxiously pacing, glancing between the boy on the bed and the priest busy beside him. Finally, the priest stopped his actions. The butler, unable to contain his anxiety, immediately asked, "Father Anderson, how is the young master?" The priest turned around, his face apologetic. "Butler Philip, unfortunately, the herbs applied earlier and the holy water just administered seemed to have had no effect on young Master Paul's condition. I have only one method left. I wonder if you agree to try it." "What method is that?" "Bloodletting. I learned it from a traveling physician. According to him, this method has become widely practiced in most regions of the Gabella Empire and the Roman Kingdom, with miraculous effects on certain ailments." Bloodletting! Butler Philip almost blacked out at the mention of this word. He thought for a while and finally gritted his teeth. "All right, Father Anderson, let's do as you suggest. May the Lord of Light bless young Master Paul." The priest raised his hands in prayer to his deity, then instructed Philip to bring a copper basin to place under the bed. He also took out a sharp knife from his carry-on box and, pulling the boy's arm from under the blanket, prepared to make the incision. As soon as the priest pressed the knife to the boy's arm, he suddenly felt the boy's pulse beat once, then begin to pulse strongly and continuously. Noticing the anomaly, Father Anderson put down the knife and continued observing. The boy's pulse gradually stabilized, and then his eyelids slowly opened. "Praise the Lord of Light!" Father Anderson and Butler Philip exclaimed in delight.
"Damn, what's that awful smell?" The boy opened his eyes and spoke in words the two men before him couldn't understand. As his vision fully cleared, the boy sat up and looked around in bewilderment. Zhao Kai, an ordinary programmer in China, enjoyed reading various web novels. He was particularly frustrated that the novels he followed were often niche and their unmotivated authors seldom updated them. Conversely, what he considered Clichéd stories were rampant. Although some popular works suited his taste, they were few and far between, and the content often had regrettable flaws. One day he decided to write his own novel, determined to continue even if no one read it, to fulfill his creative desires. As a staunch believer in Chinese industrialism, he naturally wanted to write about using scientific advancements like firearms to crush the magical beings of another world. Not wanting to make his protagonist's abilities too obvious, he planned for the character to start from scratch, climbing the technological tree. He spent a lot of time gathering essential transmigration materials, the barefoot doctor's manual for winning hearts, the practical agricultural and water management for filling granaries, the military training manual for stabilizing the world, essential resources in his view. After thorough research for over half a month, he finally decided to start writing. Unexpectedly, after years of working, his writing skills had deteriorated. Even writing the beginning left him scratching his head for half a day. To think I look down on cliché writers. At least they can write something, Zhao Kai thought, feeling embarrassed. He decided to stay up all night to finish the first chapter. After patching it together bit by bit, he couldn't resist the sleepiness anymore and dozed off at his computer. Half asleep, a pungent smell pulled him back to consciousness. He didn't expect that when he opened his eyes, the entire world had changed. Zhao Kai, or now Paul Grayman, looked around with a head full of questions. Luxurious carpets, furniture made of obviously precious wood, artistic wall decorations, and the soft mattress beneath him. Wasn't this the protagonist's bedroom he had described in his novel's first chapter? What had happened to him? He pinched his face, and it hurt. It didn't feel like a dream. "Young master, you're finally awake. Rest assured, this is not a dream." Butler Philip hurriedly approached. Paul then noticed two people in the room. The one who had just approached had graying hair and was tall and thin, appearing to be in his 40s, dressed in a black tailcoat like a stereotypical movie butler. Strangely, though the man spoke an unfamiliar language, Paul could understand it. The other man, looking about 30, wore a robe that suggested he was some kind of cleric. "Where am I? Why is my body sticky?" Paul noticed he was also speaking the unfamiliar language. "Young master, you're in your bedroom. The salve applied by Father Anderson is on your body. Please avoid vigorous movements." "Young master? Who are you?" Seeing that the young master didn't recognize him, Philip was at a loss and looked to the priest for an explanation. "Butler, do not worry. Temporary amnesia following unconsciousness is not uncommon with more rest and proper care. He will gradually recover as you guide him." Phew, what a relief. Yes, waking up is already a huge blessing. Father Anderson checked Grayman's body again. There should be no major issues with his health. Let young Master Paul rest well tonight, and the salve should stay on until tomorrow. "Thank you so much for your help today." "You're welcome. It's my duty. I will take my leave now and return tomorrow to check on young Master Paul." "All right. This way, please." Paul was gradually coming to terms with his transmigration. How had this happened? He had only taken a nap and ended up here. Which deity was playing this joke on him? Lying down again, he forced himself to calm down. His priority now was figuring out how to survive in this new world. Judging by the situation earlier, this body's status was quite high, so there shouldn't be any issues with food and clothing. Although he had no memories of the previous owner, he could speak the language. Using amnesia as an excuse should help him get by. With that thought, he felt somewhat reassured. After a while, the butler returned and adjusted his blanket. "Young master, rest well tonight. If you need anything, pull the bell cord by the bedside. I'll be in the next room." He then placed his hand on his chest, bowed slightly, and left. Paul snuggled into the blanket, beginning to ponder his future life.
Paul Grayman yawned and stretched lazily. "Young Master Paul, pardon my bluntness, but your recent actions do not befit the heir of your family." Butler Philip once again pointed out his impropriety. "Here we go again." Paul muttered to himself as he straightened up. Since waking up that morning, whether it was dressing, washing up, or eating, this butler constantly found fault with his every move. And by the way, the toothbrush and toothpaste used for washing up turned out to be a twig and salt, and the soap for washing his face was made from pig pancreas, completely natural. The priest who came last night returned once more to confirm that his body was no longer in any danger before leaving. Upon waking up, Paul found his head filled with many fragmented memories from the previous owner of this body. It seemed he was the son of an Earl, and his usual behavior was no different from the idle and debauched noble sons he knew from his previous life. Fortunately, his body was still young, so he hadn't done anything too terrible. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately for him now, the father of this body had led troops to fight pirates a few days ago. The Earl believed it was time for his son, as the family heir, to see some blood and had brought him along. Unexpectedly, they fell into an ambush and the Earl died heroically in the breakout while his son was knocked unconscious by a pirate stone. Thanks to the fierce fighting of the family knights and guards, they finally cut a bloody path back to the Lord's castle, bringing back Earl Grayman's body and the unconscious young master. The young master remained unconscious with no sign of waking, so the castle had to hold the old Earl's funeral in his absence. It was a full week after his injury when Paul finally woke up. The butler began trying to help him recover his previous memories, answering all his questions related to his amnesia without reservation, which saved him a lot of effort. "So, you're saying that my father and I fell into a pirate ambush and my father has already perished?" "Yes, those cursed, damned, hell-bound pirates. Young Master Paul, you must avenge the Earl." The butler, who had served old Grayman since his youth, couldn't help but weep bitterly thinking of his old master's tragic death at the hands of pirates. "Don't worry, I will definitely avenge my father. I can't wait to skin those pirates and eat their flesh." He knew well what he should say now. "Those pirates are quite arrogant after their recent victory and have been raiding many villages and towns, taking advantage of the leaderless territory. Will they attack here? The knights have arranged proper defenses, and Alden Town is currently not in any danger. But since you were unconscious, everyone decided to wait for you to wake up before taking further action. I've already notified the butlers of your awakening.
They will come to visit this afternoon, and I think you should discuss future plans with them. You're right, Philip. First, take me to my father's grave to pay my respects. The old Earl's visage became clearer in Paul's mind, and upon hearing of his death, he felt a surge of inexplicable sadness. As more fragments of Paul Grayman's memories emerged in his mind, he constantly wondered whether he had taken over someone else's body or had simply regained memories of a past life. When he thought of paying his respects at the grave, he felt a genuine familial bond with the old Earl and leaned more towards the latter explanation. If that's the case, then he would live well as the heir of this family in this new world. My apologies, young master. Your body has just recovered from the serious illness, so please don't be too sorrowful. The cemetery is right behind the castle. Please follow me. Upon returning, Paul maintained silence, but Butler Phillips seemed to notice that he usually had many nonsense to question him about, and now he was aware of his sadness at the death of the father, so he decided to give him some space. After paying respects at the grave, all of Paul's gloom had dissipated. He knew he would be the leader of this territory, as well as the engine in guiding this territory towards a good future. He felt the sense of responsibility and a compromise with the original body's idiosyncrasies, and a gathering of death and rebirth. The heir of the new world had finally stepped foot into this continent. He decided to live well as the heir of this family in this new world. In the afternoon, all the butlers who remained in Aldentown gathered in the castle hall. Due to the recent death of the Lord, the atmosphere in the hall was very somber, and everyone wore expressions of sadness. It was clear that the old Earl had been well liked. Paul sat in the Lord's seat, feeling extremely nervous. Before crossing over, he had only ever taken notes quietly in the corner during company meetings, never experiencing anything like sitting on the chairman platform under everyone's gaze. And additionally, the sight of a room full of people in medieval clothes felt somewhat surreal. He cleared his throat awkwardly. Standing to the side, Butler Phillips spoke up. Young Master Paul has just recovered from a serious illness, and his health is still not very good. Since everyone is here, let's discuss together how to deal with the current situation. People started to discuss in small groups. Then I'll start. It's time to regroup and teach those pirates a lesson. They are rampaging ashore, stirring up great anger. If we let them continue unchecked, how will any of us face our subjects? Finally, a burly man with a square face and a strong build stood up, loudly expressing his opinion. Well said. I agree. The strong man's words garnered considerable support. These pirate landings are unusual. They've never penetrated so deeply inland before. Since the Earl fell in battle, the morale of our troops has been low. It's not wise to act rashly now. We should quickly seek aid from neighboring lords. There were opposing voices as well. Even if they agree, it will take at least half a month for reinforcements from the nearest territories to arrive, right? Soon, the group divided into debates around these two viewpoints. Watching the debate, Paul wanted to interject but didn't know what to say, so he awkwardly picked up a glass of water from the table to cover his embarrassment. All right, everyone. The square-faced man who began speaking suddenly halted the arguments. We should hear the opinion of the young master and let him make the final decision. A slightly sullen man murmured, "But he's just a boy. What does he know?" Watch your tone. Paul Grayman is the legitimate heir of this territory, the lord we are about to pledge our allegiance to. The square-faced man stood up abruptly, glaring at the man who had just questioned the young master. Around him, knights eyed him angrily, some even placing their hands on the swords at their waists. The sullen man shrank back, lowering his head. It was uncomfortable to be the target of such intense scrutiny from a group of robust men. Butler Philip quickly intervened to smooth things over. Now is not the time for internal strife. Young master, please speak. Realizing he couldn't remain silent, Paul straightened his chest and spoke loudly. Yes, especially in times like these, we must stay calm and united to overcome the current difficulties. He turned to the square-faced man and asked, "And who are you?" "I am Bryce Alder, your military commander." Philip had already reminded everyone of the young master's amnesia, but Bryce volunteered his identity without hesitation. "How many troops do we have available now?" We currently have 263 soldiers in the territory who are battle-ready, including 15 knights and 20 attendants. Several villages have organized their own militia, totaling around 300 people. However, these militias vary in quality and have not undergone formal training. Are our soldiers regulars? I mean, do they train every day throughout the year? How could that be? These people are crucial laborers at home, usually working in the fields. They are summoned for training once a month at least, sometimes quarterly. They were gathered now due to the pirate invasion in Aldentown. How many pirates are there? Based on estimates from the ambush, around 500. Historically, pirates have never conducted such a large-scale inland incursion. I know we are at a disadvantage now, but they haven't used their full strength while raiding villages. We can definitely set up an ambush and give them a taste of their own medicine. Bryce once again pitched his proactive approach. What about logistics? How long can our food supplies sustain us? No need to worry about that. On one hand, soldiers brought some provisions when summoned. On the other, the town has enough food to feed several hundred people comfortably, and we're not under siege. Paul's series of questions made everyone nod their heads and set aside their faint condescension. While most questions gave the impression of deliberate maturity, some hit the mark precisely. It seemed this young master wasn't just about eating, drinking, and having fun as perceived in normal times. He knew that with the old Earl gone, the responsibility would soon fall on his shoulders. We can expand our troops first, at least matching the pirates' numbers, and then conduct drills for a month. We should seize an opportunity to wipe out the pirates while also sending envoys to nearby territories for assistance. Someone proposed a compromise. I think this idea is feasible. Paul slammed the table. He didn't want to appear cowardly or reckless. Since he agreed, and no one voiced objections, they proceeded to discuss details about recruitment. Finally, they discussed formally confirming Paul's inheritance of the title and territory, a matter where he was clearly the legitimate first in line. It was quickly settled. The Master of Seals would personally go to the capital to report to the royal court, requesting an official decree from the king to recognize his title and seeking additional aid to deal with the pirates. After the question and answer session and discussion just now, Paul gradually adapted to his new identity. Once the nervousness faded, he quickly remembered the grand plan he had planned late into the night. Facing a troubled territory and leaderless people, they awaited someone destined to turn the tide. Was there any better way to start? Let me illuminate the land of this wilderness with the light of industrial civilization. He suddenly felt invigorated.
Butler Philip leaned close and whispered, "Young master, if there's nothing else, let's adjourn. The knights need to inspect defenses around the region. Yes, combating the pirates was now of utmost importance." Paul declared the meeting over, and everyone began to take their leave. "Wait, everyone." Just as they were about to leave the hall, a slightly immature voice came from behind. "Given recent low morale among the troops, I've decided to schedule a military parade in the square to review the soldiers and boost morale." He wanted to see what kind of army he commanded.
Hansel Abbott, a noble baron of the Aldor kingdom, at least in the eyes of commoners, was now in a sorry state, running through muddy rural roads with a group of ragged refugees. "Damn rebels," he muttered once more. Just a week ago, Duke Giles, known as the Greedy Wolf, had launched a rebellion. With the king incapacitated by illness for many days, the only one who could suppress the rebellion, Her Highness the Princess, led her knights to the eastern highlands to fend off barbarian raids on the kingdom's borders. Although the Duke's ambitions were well known, the royal court had primarily sought to appease him, never expecting the rebellion to erupt so suddenly. To make matters worse, it turned out that Sir Halls, the commander of the Royal City Guards, known for their loyalty to the crown, was secretly a pawn of the Duke, striking a devastating blow while the elite royal troops were away. The Abbott family had always been seen as staunch supporters of the crown. Hearing this news outside the city, Hansel was so frightened that he dared not return home, fleeing towards the highlands overnight with his personal servant. The entire Crystal Glare region seemed to collapse overnight. Bandits emerged from everywhere, and the city guards began looting and burning, behaving like marauders. Moreover, Duke Giles's notorious reputation caused a large number of commoners and loyal minor nobles to flee to other places. Hansel intermittently gleaned some rumors from the refugees. It seemed that after the rebels stormed the palace, they hadn't found the king. At the very last moment before the uprising, the Royal Academy's martial students were hastily mobilized, along with the small number of royal guards protecting the still unconscious king and other key figures, fleeing from the North Gate. Hansel had seen carriages bearing the royal insignia on the road, but unlike the refugees rushing to seek shelter, he did not follow. At that time, displaying the royal banner still felt somewhat suspicious to him. Now, leading his servant Toman along another path crowded with refugees, their carriage got stuck in a mud puddle just moments ago. Despite Toman's efforts to free the horse's rear from the muck and pull the carriage out, they were robbed again by a passing gang of bandits, who took the horse and what little money remained. All Hansel could do now was curse the rebels responsible for all of this repeatedly. Just as the master and servant planned to take a rest by the roadside, a noble-style carriage caught up from behind. Its coat of arms was obscured. As it passed them, however, a face appeared at the carriage window that Hansel found oddly familiar and somewhat uneasy despite his disgust. "Well, isn't this Abbott?" The fleeting smirk on the person's face erased any previous sense of familiarity. Despite this, the fully armed knights behind the carriage reassured him somewhat. He decided he must hitch a ride on this carriage no matter what. He had to steel himself an appeal. "Matthew, my old friend, I've been robbed by a bunch of shameless bandits. Could you, in the spirit of our long-standing friendship, offer me some assistance?" Matthew chuckled knowingly. "Why, of course. Can I allow my good friend, Baron Hansel Abbott, to remain covered in mud among a bunch of refugees like this? Such a scandal for our nobility if word were to get out." He spoke loudly in an exaggerated tone, opening the carriage door and drawing the attention of passing refugees who stopped to watch. "Thank you. I knew you wouldn't abandon an old friend." Hansel boarded the carriage, vowing inwardly to thoroughly mock Matthew for his misfortune when the opportunity arose. Matthew Stoneman, Hansel's classmate and his arch-enemy throughout their entire student days, always found themselves in fierce debates during every debate competition, arguing vehemently, with faces red and tempers flaring. Privately, they had countless instances of backbiting each other, labeling each other as cunning villains. Now, however, Hansel found himself having to rely on the help of his sworn enemy to flee. How unpredictable life can be, Hansel sighed, then felt relieved that his mother and sister, who were away visiting relatives, weren't in the capital. "Matthew, wipe that mournful face off. What are your plans?" Hansel straightened his collar and regained some composure. "At such a time of turmoil in the kingdom, it is only natural for me to offer my humble services under the command of Her Highness the Princess. Though my personal abilities may be limited, it is our Abbott family's unwavering duty to assist the crown in times of trouble." Always so lofty in your words," Matthew sneered. "Well, I have similar intentions. The Stoneman family has always been steadfast in our loyalty to the crown. I wonder if Her Highness the Princess will shelter us once we reach the military camp. Matthew, where were you coming from before fleeing?" "I was auditing the estate outside the city when I received notice from my father to hurry to the highlands and seek refuge with Her Highness. I saw caravans bearing the royal insignia on the road. Why didn't you follow them?" "You didn't follow either. In such chaos, flaunting the royal banner like that? Am I a fool? You still underestimate people just like before." As they bickered back and forth, the carriage suddenly came to a stop. Both men tensed. Could it be rebels or bandits? Outside, someone with a foreign accent shouted, "Are you from the Stoneman family? Could you please step out?" Matthew and Hansel had no choice but to exit the carriage.
Standing by the roadside next to the carriage was an elderly man who bowed slightly in a noble gesture. Introducing himself, the old man said, "I am Baron Wackley Ford, the Steward General of Earl Grayman of the Northwest Coast, here to greet you on behalf of my lord." "Hello, I am Baron Matthew Stoneman of the Stoneman family, and this is Baron Hansel Abbott of the Abbott family. How may we assist you?" "I came to the capital for estate affairs to pay respects to His Majesty the King. However, on my way I saw many commoners fleeing north with their families, all saying there's been a rebellion in the capital. I seek specific details from both of you. As esteemed guests from far away, you must be unaware. It's that fellow Giles who's done this, betraying His Majesty the King." "Oh, you mean Duke Giles, known as the Greedy Wolf." "Yes, now the capital is occupied by his cohorts. I advise you not to go." "I haven't been to the capital in nearly a decade, only to encounter such a major event upon my return. This Giles is truly despicable." "Indeed. We fear falling into the hands of the rebels, so we plan to seek refuge with Her Highness the Princess. She's currently leading troops in the Highlands to repel barbarians on the kingdom's borders. With her capabilities, she should soon restore order." "I wonder about His Majesty the King." "His Majesty was likely rescued. If you wish, Lord Ford, you could accompany us to find Her Highness. His Majesty fell ill not long ago and entrusted all affairs to the princess for handling." "Is that so? Very well, then I shall trouble the two of you on the journey."
In the northeast territory of the Kingdom of Aldor, adjacent to the tallest mountains in the known world, the Rocky Mountains, lies a vast plateau between these majestic mountains and the heartland of the kingdom, commonly known as the Eastern Highlands. Legally, this area belongs to the kingdom, but scattered throughout are various tribes of uncivilized barbarians. Some of these tribes nominally submit to the kingdom, while others are unruly, frequently causing trouble on the borders. Due to the complex terrain, supply difficulties, and the highland climate, the kingdom has always had difficulty dealing with them. Fortunately, these tribes are not united, and their divisions have prevented major problems with the tribes that have sworn allegiance to the kingdom. However, this year is different from previous ones. Just as spring planting began, tribes large and small, especially those historically at odds with the kingdom, unexpectedly launched coordinated attacks. The military stationed in the border regions was caught off guard. By the time news reached the Crystal Glare, the situation in the Highlands had deteriorated significantly. After urgent deliberations, the leadership decided that Princess Catherine would personally lead the troops to repel them. Although everyone sensed something amiss, never had the barbarians been so coordinated, there was no time for detailed investigations. With spring planting season underway, a chaotic influx of barbarians into the heartland would spell disaster. Swift, decisive action was the only correct choice. The hastily united tribes of barbarians were clearly no match for the well-trained regular army of the kingdom. After over a month of fighting, it seemed the tribes were about to be driven back to the highlands. However, just when everything seemed favorable, the worst happened. Duke Giles, known as the Greedy Wolf, turned traitor. In the camp where the kingdom's army was stationed, a military council was being held in a heavily guarded central tent. Your Highness, generals, the information I have is as follows. I believe you all have a general understanding of the situation in the capital, said a man with a prominent hooked nose and lean cheeks, freshly reporting the latest intelligence from the Crystal Glare. After his report, there was a long silence in the tent, the only sound being the breaths of those inside. After a while, a voice broke the silence. Thankfully, His Majesty the King did not fall into the hands of the rebels. Is he safe now? Where is he? It was a young commander, his brown hair standing like steel needles atop his head, despite being unkempt due to the ongoing war, exuding an aura of charisma. Please rest assured, Your Highness, His Majesty is safe now, attended by the court physician and the royal chaplain, said Viscount Klein. He did not press further on the second question he had raised. Even the city guards who had always been loyal are turning against us. Can we ensure that there are no informants or spies among the spies? After the silence was broken, the others began discussing. Please assign me a troop immediately. I will definitely crush these rebels and reclaim the capital.
Don't act rashly. The battle with the barbarians is not over yet. We must not divide our forces. What? Let those bastards run amok? Don't forget, the capital is stocked with a large amount of military supplies. If we're late, the rebels will have emptied it. Tsk, a bunch of strategists who don't understand. What did you say? Lester, dare you duel with us? Sitting at the head was a woman clad in knightly armor, her bright golden waves of hair so dazzling that even without makeup, her beauty could captivate anyone. Princess Catherine Redney of the Kingdom of Aldor. At this moment, her arched eyebrows were furrowed tightly as she stared intently at the map before her. The arguments among the generals seemed not to affect her. After a while, she raised her head and straightened her posture. Everyone. As soon as she spoke, the surroundings immediately quieted. I think it's better to first hear the reactions from other parts of the kingdom. Lord Merlin, please tell us everything you know. Earl Merlin, with his pointed beard, nodded to the princess and continued speaking. At present, aside from those who were previously colluding with him, no other nobles or powers have openly sided with Giles. This is also the most puzzling aspect. With Giles' apparent strength, even in a surprise attack like this, his odds against us are only 50-50. Moreover, Duke Dodge has clearly declared his loyalty to the crown, swearing to resist Giles to the end. Excellent. Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief. The Dodge family's territory lay along Giles' path towards the capital, serving as a crucial barrier. With this stronghold secured, Giles' main army would find it challenging to support the rebels advancing towards the capital. However, the situation is dire. With Giles' rebellion, many hidden forces have become restless. Pirates along the northwest coast and bandits in the southern mountains have suddenly begun ravaging, plunging the entire kingdom into chaos. Currently, many lords are preoccupied and unable to devote themselves to the crown. Furthermore, many others are clearly adopting a wait-and-see attitude, neither openly supporting Giles nor explicitly siding with the royal family. These fence-sitting bastards, they must not be spared. The armored princess turned to her generals. Do you any of you have good suggestions for our next steps? Klein pondered for a moment before saying, Your Highness, I believe our top priority should still be reclaiming the capital. If the capital remains out of our hands, this will severely impact both military morale and civilian morale. Thankfully, Duke Dodge has blocked Giles' main force. This is an opportunity for us.
The others concurred with Klein's suggestion. Catherine nodded and then slowly stood up. All the generals focused their attention on her, knowing that the commander-in-chief had made up her mind. Orders were swiftly issued to the generals. Leicester, immediately lead 1,000 cavalry day and night to reinforce Duke Dodge's fortress. Yes, live or die by the fortress. Homan, take your men to the capital to gather intelligence on the rebel situation. Report any developments immediately. Yes. Done. Inform Chief Roroff that he can proceed with his action. Upon success, he will be formally recognized as Earl of the Highlands by the kingdom. I'll do it right away. The rest of you, proceed according to the previously agreed upon plans. Ensure that this conflict is resolved within 10 days. Understood. The meeting was concluded shortly after, and everyone dispersed to carry out their assigned tasks. Only Earl Merlin remained, kneeling before the princess as soon as the others had left. Your Highness, I am incompetent. I failed to timely gather intelligence on the rebellion, resulting in the loss of the capital and endangering your Majesty. I bear full responsibility for this failure. You do bear a responsibility that cannot be avoided. The princess's gaze turned stern. Father entrusted you with the kingdom's intelligence system, yet you allow the rebellion to occur under your nose. With the capital lost, aside from other impacts, do you realize the blow to military morale alone? Earl Merlin bowed his head lower. Even without looking, he could feel the princess's anger. Your Highness, please execute me. That's enough. Now is not the time to discuss punishment. From now on, focus the intelligence efforts on Giles's insurgents. Leave no trace of their actions unnoticed. Yes, I will redeem myself through success, ensuring such a grave oversight never occurs again. And those fence-sitters, keep a close watch on them too. I don't want another rebel force cropping up mysteriously behind our backs. Absolutely. And regarding the local lords, I have a suggestion. Oh, let's hear it. For those with uncertain attitudes, we can use both overt and covert approaches. We'll strengthen monitoring covertly and send royal commissioners openly to their territories. On one hand, we'll publicize Giles's crimes along the way, and on the other, press them to send troops to defend the crown. This will morally suppress them. That's a good plan. Proceed with it. Fortunately, many nobles from the capital have recently sought refuge with the army. Select royal commissioners from among them. You have full authority over this matter. Yes, I will arrange it immediately.